Okay, in this video we're going to look at how to use CSS to style elements on the page. So that could be the colors, the positioning, those kind of things. Now in the previous videos where we looked at doing the navigation bar and the footer, we created our own style sheet called layout.css where we applied some rules to control the appearance of those elements on the page. So if you don't know how to create your own style sheet or how to add these rules, you need to watch those videos first. Okay, let's have a quick look at this page in the browser and see what we need to still do with it. So we'll just preview quickly. So there's a few things that I can see that we may need to change, and one is that this banner image is quite a long way. There's quite a big gap there between the top of the banner image and the navigation menu, so I think that needs to be closed up. And if we have a look here, we can see that this heading text here sits down from this top of the YouTube video, so we want those really to be level. We can see with the horizontal rule here, this is nicely equally spaced, but when we get down to this one, there's a good spacing here, but there's too big a gap on this side of that horizontal rule, so maybe we need to look at that. I feel that the text is a little bit too close to some of these images and maybe the buttons as well, so we need to look at that. And then in the footer area, we've got the footer which is actually touching the map, so I think we need to look at that as well. Okay, so let's make a start. Oh, one more thing as well, as I want to change the background color of the page. Okay, so let's deal with the background color of the page first. So making sure that I'm working on my style sheet, I'm going to click anywhere on the white of the page, and that should hopefully select the body tag down the bottom here. And then I can go and add a new CSS rule for that. Now it's picking up the paragraphs within the body tag. So if I were to apply CSS changes now, it would only affect the text, the paragraph text on the page. I don't want to actually do that. I want to remove that P tag and say I want to actually affect the body tag itself, which is the color of the page. So I'm going to press enter, and then I can come down here and choose a background color for the page. So in this instance I'm going to change that to be CCCC to keep with our color scheme that we've been using, and that should change the color of the page. There we go, so that's that one done there. Now I've also got a bit of a gap at the top here between my navigation bar and where this banner starts to appear, so it looks like it's quite a long gap. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close that off. Now what happened was when you created your Bootstrap navig bar, Bootstrap automatically adds a bit of code, a bit of CSS styling code to your web page, and that bit of CSS styling code is added to the actual body tag itself, and it's an inline style. So it's written actually inside the body tag. So this piece of code appears whenever you create a navigation bar, and that's by default by Bootstrap. So Bootstrap want to have some padding at the top of the page of 70 pixels. And what Bootstrap are trying to do is say we need to allow, because this navigation bar is being fixed to the top of the page, we need to push the content below it down. Because if they didn't do that, then our content would be underneath this fixed navigation bar. So it would actually start off, when you preview the page, the banner would actually be underneath the navigation bar. So Bootstrap realize this, so what they do is they automatically preset a padding top of 70 pixels to ensure that no content appears underneath the navigation bar when you first start to view the page. Now it's a bit too much in terms of what they've applied, so we can just go back into the code view and we can change that. So if I come back up to here, that's a little bit too much, so what I might do is I might change that to 45 pixels and then go back into live view and have a look at that. So now you can see that the banner that we've got here is now in line with that navigation bar, and the reason it is in line with that, more or less, and let's have a preview in the browser and see if it's actually looking any better in there. Okay, so that looks a lot better. So we can see that when the page starts, the actual banner is actually in line with the navigation bar at the top here, and that's because the navigation bar's height is roughly around about 45 pixels. So by setting the padding top to 45 pixels, I know that I'm going to get my navigation banner, my banner here, sorry, just in line with that navigation bar that we've got at the top. Okay, so the next thing to do is to create a little bit of a space between these elements that are on the page. So the banner is actually on top of the navigation, on top of the YouTube video. So let's go and have a look at that. So what I need to do is select this row here, So I need to come and click in the row, but I'm picking up a div, the first div that covers 6 columns. I need to make sure that I go back here and pick up the actual row. I'm going to add a class to that, so I'm going to add a unique identifier, which I'm going to call .youtube or .video, I think is what I'm going to call it, so that I know that that's the video div. Press enter. I want that rule to be added to the CSS style sheet that we've created, the layout one, and then I'm going to add a new selector. So for the unique row, which is called video, I'm going to add a layout property, and I'm going to set the margin top. So I'm going to set the margin top to this to be 2, we'll do that in EMs, and we'll see what that looks like. So that's going to create hopefully a gap between these two elements on the page, and it's going to be 2 EMs. So that's giving us a bit of spacing there. Now the other thing that I want to deal with as well is I want to deal with this heading. When you add headings into Dreamweaver, heading tags automatically have margins applied to them. So there's a default margin that has been set to this heading tag, and that happens with all heading tags when you add them onto the page. So what we need to do is we need to come and tackle that. So I'm selecting this heading tag, and I'm going to click here to create a new CSS rule. Now it's going to pick up the video here, and it's picking up my H2, and that's what I want it to do. So I'm going to just press enter on there, and I need to set the margin here to actually be 0px. So although it said 0 pixels, it's not really. So we need to make sure that it is 0 pixels, and then what that would do is it would push that in line with the top of the video. So that's because there was a default margin that was applied. So you don't see what that margin is. You have to actually come in and tell it, no, you are going to be 0, you really are. Okay, another problem that we had was that this looks like it's too far away again. So again, this is down to the heading. It's down to these H3 tags having a preset margin set to them, and we need to remove it just like we did up here with the H2 tag on this row. So what I need to do is select the row, add a unique identifier. And the reason I need to add a unique identifier is because I don't want it to affect other H3s that I have elsewhere on the page. I only want it to affect the H3s that are sitting inside this row. So I'm going to call this .columns as an identifier, and then add it to my layout.css, and then when I come to create a selector, it's going to pick up the rows columns. Actually, that's not what I wanted. So I'm just going to minus that, because what I want to do is actually pick up the heading tag, the H3 tag, and then add my selector. Adding that in, it picks up the H3 tag that sits inside a row called columns. Press enter. That's going to allow me now to set the margin top there again to be 0. And it should affect all of the H3 tags that are sitting inside, and close that up. Okay, next thing to do is to affect these paragraphs. We said that they were affected a bit too close, so I'm just going to click on them to select one of the paragraph tags, create a new CSS rule, and this will affect all the paragraphs that are sitting in a row called columns. In other words, it will affect all of these paragraphs inside of here. And I'm going to set a margin top of, we'll try 2, and we'll set that to EMs, and that creates a nice little bit of gap there. And I might do a margin bottom as well to spread it out from the button. Put that as 2 EMs as well. So that's created a gap top and bottom of those paragraphs, just to create a nice little bit of spacing there between those elements on the page. Okay, and then we said that we wanted the footer to have a bit of a gap here between these. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to pick up the footer div, and I'm going to target that footer div. So I'm going to create a new CSS rule that's going to target the footer row, and I think I will set that to have a margin top of 2 EMs, so it will give a 2 EM space at the top of the footer div. Okay, let's quickly save this and then preview in Safari and save and have a look at the changes that we've made. So we can now see that the banner's going right up to the top of the navigation bar. We can see that we've got a bit of a gap now between these elements that are on the page. We've also got that heading is pretty much in line as well with our YouTube video, whereas before it was stepped down. If we come down here, we've now got a nice sort of equal spacing going on between these elements that we didn't have before. Just need to zoom out there. And then we've got down here a nice gap as well between our footer at the bottom of the page and the Google map as well. And we've increased some spacing here between the paragraphs as well. So that's just using some CSS to control the layout and position of elements on your page. In terms of changing the font, I did show how to change the font here in the previous video that we used. And again, you could use that technique if you wanted to change the fonts on the page.